Welcome to the Strategy and Leadership Podcast, the podcast that brings you practical advice, lessons, and stories from senior leaders and thought leaders from around the world. The Strategy and Leadership Podcast is brought to you by SME Strategy, working with organizations around the world to create and implement their strategic plans. To learn more, visit SMEstrategy.net. And now, your host, Anthony Taylor.
Welcome, folks, to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Today, my guest is Andy Lansing, who is the CEO. Andy, how are you today?
I'm good, Anthony. Nice to see you and be with you.
I'm so excited. I just found out you have your own secret podcast, which I can't tell anybody about, but it speaks to how cool and impactful your organization is. If you folks listening haven't heard of the Levy, you might know them through other ways. But Andy, why don't you tell our listeners who the Levy is, who you are, and we'll get into the interview.
So it's a long story to tell, and I'm not going to tell the whole thing because we don't have time, but we are a restaurant company based in Chicago, and there's two primary areas of our business. One is restaurants. We own and operate restaurants throughout the country. And the other part of our business, which is even bigger, is our sports and entertainment group that operates the food service at virtually every iconic building in the country, some throughout the world, events from Grammys, Kentucky Derby, Coachella, to Dodger Stadium, Wrigley Field, NBA, NASCAR, tennis, golf, convention centers, you name it. We like to say we bring restaurant quality food to places where people least expect it. So I think people probably have experienced us at some point in their journey.
I love that. And if memory serves, you started from one single delicatessen to now 50,000-ish employees, something like that?
Yeah, started as one delicatessen in Chicago, and our story is a happy coincidence of luck and maybe a little strategy, but we got into this business totally by accident.
Well, was it opportunity meets preparedness? That's when you get real good luck. So, but it looks like, in addition to hard work, luck, and all of that stuff, your organization has been extremely innovative in the work that they do. But before I get into, the kind of nuts and bolts of the organization, why don't we take it back? What's it been like? What has your CEO journey been like for you? How's that going so far?
Well, it's been great. I mean, obviously, I've loved it. I've been at this company for 35 years, and I think I'm living proof of one of the greatest sayings that I know of, that I quote every day, which I think was a line from a John Lennon song: "Life is what happens when you're busy making plans." And I think in my case, nothing could be more true. The last thing I thought I was going to be in was the restaurant business, and yet here I am. So the journey has been incredibly exciting. I feel like I got the greatest job in the world because I work around food and sports, and I can't imagine things get much better than that.
No, that sounds like a pretty dang good job to me. So let me ask, 35 years as a CEO, scaling from one, deli to, what you're working on right now. What are some of the kind of defining moments in the organization that support you get there? And then in the spirit of leadership, how did you evolve as an individual to make those opportunities into what they are today?
Yeah, Anthony, I think there were a couple defining moments in our company's history. The first was after we had operated a few restaurants in Chicago, we got in the sports and entertainment business totally by accident. The White Sox were building the first skyboxes back at the old Comiskey Park, and they had this idea that if they had a restaurant company cater the food and the skyboxes, they could sell them better, rather than having the hot dog and beer guys trying to do the high end. So they came to us and said, "Hey, would you cater the skyboxes from your restaurants?" And we said, "No, we're not caterers, we're restaurateurs, no." And they literally asked us, Anthony, like 5 times. And finally we said yes for all the wrong reasons. Maybe they'd be good someday, we'd get tickets to the World Series. And so we tried it and we got into it. And what we realized pretty quickly was, wow, the restaurant business that we were in was the hardest business in the world. You're only as good as your last meal. People come in with expectations way, way, way high, and you try to hit them or exceed them. But what dawned on us is people historically came into stadiums and arenas with expectations way down here. So it was, if we brought the restaurateur mentality in, the training, the food, the sort of approach, people went nuts. Like they were expecting, hot dogs and beer. We were giving them crab cake and tenderloin served by nice people. So it sort of took off. And once we realized that and people started taking notice, that was a pivotal moment because we had a tiger by the tail and we were like, let's go with this thing. So we decided to expand. I would say the other sort of defining moment for us was around the year 2000. We went through what so many companies go through, which is what do we want to be when we grow up? Do we want to go public? Do we want to sell? Do we want to buy? And all these companies were approaching us saying, we want to buy you. And we said, we're really not for sale. We went down the IPO route for a little bit. That didn't feel right because we didn't want to live our life that way. And finally, we met the Compass Group based out of the UK. They're like the largest contract food service company in the world. And they said, we want to buy you. And we said, well, we don't want to sell. And they said, well, what kind of deal would you do with us? Because we love what you're doing and we want to bet the jockeys. You guys are amazing. We think you got the greatest future in the world. We want to put our horsepower behind you. So we struck a deal with them where we sold 49% of the company to them in 2000 and said, if you are true to what you say you are, which is to leave us alone, not spoil who we are, we'll sell the rest to you down the road, but you got to prove it to us. And from day one, they did. They were the most supportive, continue to be partners. And, when we met them, we were 200 million in revenue back in 2000. And this year we'll knock on the door $3 to $3.2 billion in revenue. So it's been a great story. And that was a pivotal moment for us as we were trying to figure out who we wanted to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you do that? Like, how do you, as a CEO of an organization, as an individual, as a leadership team, what do you do to stick to your guns like that? Because it sounds like there's, 2 or 3, or I'm sure dozens, actually probably hundreds of those moments where you really needed to stick to your roots. And in some cases you deviated and you found an opportunity. And in others you said, hey, absolutely not. How do you incorporate that connectedness to your mission into the work that you do?
Well, I think so many companies, Anthony, zigzag. They claim that they have the greatest culture in the world. Maybe they'll put a poster on the wall with some fancy words, but every year it's the flavor of the year. They zig, they zag, and they change who they are. We've never changed who we are. We have always said we are a family business. We're a big family, but we're family, and that the two most important things at Levy, other companies don't talk about this, it's not right for every other company, was 2 words: nice and passion. If you give me someone who is a nice human being and who is passionate about this business, that is the magic elixir for success at Levy. I don't care where they went to school. I don't care if they went to school. I don't care if they grew up in the hospitality business. You give me someone with those 2 traits, and that has never wavered over decades. And everybody knows you can be the most talented guy in the world, but if you're not a nice human being, this is the wrong company for you. And you can be the nicest person in the world, but if you don't have the fire in the belly, it's the wrong place. So we knew that was sort of the most important thing, as well as old-fashioned hospitality, like never forgetting that we want to treat people like they're guests in our home. And above all else, the food has to taste really good or people aren't going to buy it. So we sort of like stuck to our guns as opposed to companies that I don't think are comfortable sticking to their guns.
Yeah, no, I get that. And what I love about it is it's simple. You know what I mean? It's people come up with value statements that, sound really good, don't mean anything at the end of it, but you're just like, hey, like what are the values that we want? And one of the things I appreciate about, Midwest folks is like that Midwest niceness. Sometimes you can be overly nice and we won't go there. Minnesota nice, but not to Illinois nice. But I just find it interesting. And you're saying, hey, this is how you're going to win. This is like any great organization and sports organization. You need to have the right people with the right mentality so you can win. And before I forget, I was at this box at LA or Dodger Stadium. And the food was primo. So if you're responsible for that, thank you very much.
We are responsible, and I'm glad to hear that. Anthony, the other thing that I would just quickly add is, and I think this goes without saying, but I think, you asked me what kind of leadership lessons or what's the key. And again, I think there's a million books out there, most of which are worthless. I think at the end of the day, it's about surrounding yourself with great people, giving them what they need and getting out of their way. Like, I think that the trait, if you want to truly define the best leaders, just look at who they surround themselves with. Like my vision in life, which could never happen, is if I was interviewing for the highest level position in this company, I would love not to interview that person. I would love to spend time in a room full of all the people that report to that person. And I could tell you with 100% accuracy whether that's a good leader who I haven't even met yet. And so to me, I'm smart enough to surround myself with people who make me feel like an idiot every day and do a great job of that.
Well, I do appreciate your approach to team, but I also can tell just from how you talk about things that you care as well. Like you really care about the product, you care about the people, you care about the reputation, you care about what you're doing. And when you eat, and I'm a hospitality veteran, I'm a waiter before I did this, you taste food that has love in it and you taste food that doesn't. And I think that if you have those ingredients, really, it's the key to success. But I do have another question. You've been able to stick to your guns. You've been able to drive your mission. You've been able to do all of that work. But simultaneously, you've been able to lead a lot of firsts. You've been able to innovate. You've been able to do new things. Would you say that's likely a byproduct of the people, but how do you foster an innovation culture in your organization to do new things in food, to do new things in hospitality, to do new things in technology?
It clearly has to start with me and me encouraging people. Let's go. Let's try. We're not going to be successful at everything. I'm okay failing. Let's just fail quickly. Let's fail cheaply. Let's try. We have the world's greatest petri dish in terms of places to try things. We're everywhere. You want to try something at a few NFL stadiums, a few MLB, a tennis tournament, a horse race. Like we've got the places, and I encourage our folks, and they know I want to try. And if we're successful on 4 of 50 initiatives, I'm totally good with that. I'm totally good. Because the one thing, for better or worse, and I know this is supposed to be very flattering, we are really copied in this industry. Like when we do something, you can count and one of our competitors is going to do it. And I suppose I should be flattered. It actually pisses me off and just motivates me to keep going faster and keep getting our people to go faster. And it's a culture. You can't say to people, be innovative, and then swat them if they fail. And you have to also say, good ideas come from everywhere, from like dishwashers in locations, servers who really know what it's like. So it's a culture, but it has to start with me.
Yeah, absolutely. As we finish up, we talked about a lot of historical learning, a lot of growth, the fact that you've put great people around you, the fact that you've created a culture of acceptable failure, in baseball. If you're batting 300, you're one of the best baseball players, including that. If we take your own personal development as a CEO of a $3 billion business, what are you taking on in your own growth, in your own development? Is there anything that your challenges that you haven't quite mastered yet with where you sit?
Well, yeah, I don't think I've mastered anything yet. I really mean that as the truth. The one thing I say to everybody around here is both as a company, a healthy company keeps evolving, right? And we've managed to sort of disrupt our industry a couple of times, and others don't disrupt it ever. And we've managed to disrupt it a couple of times with things we've done. But the only way for a company to evolve is obviously for its leaders to evolve. So we all have to keep evolving. I'm a totally different leader than I was 1 year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'll be a different leader in a year from now. You learn and you get more experience and you get more seasoning and you marinate a little longer and you realize that certain things matter and certain things don't. I suppose when I started in this business, some would say I was more black and white than I am now. Like there's one way and another way. And now, of course, as you know, there are so many shades of gray in almost every decision. And it's just sort of being self-effacing and realizing you don't have all the answers. You can be a moron and admit you're a moron. And people actually really respond to that when you have that way. So I'm evolving, Anthony. I'm not even close to there yet.
No, I love that. And I think, what I reflect on that is I think of like the sports that we all love. And I look at basketball as an example. The game of basketball has shifted from what it was in the 80s with the big bruisers to now you have 7-foot guys shooting 3-pointers and who knows what's coming up next. Watching the US play against Japan, and Japan was, so every sport evolves. So not only do you need to evolve internally, you need to evolve externally. And all I can say is I look forward to the next meal that I eat from the Levy Restaurant Group, whether I know it or not. And Andy, just thank you for making the time today. Where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work? And how can they find out more if they want to, partner with you in any shape or form?
Oh, that's nice of you to say. We're everywhere, LevyRestaurants.com. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media. It's not hard to find us at all. And we love hearing from people. We love hearing new ideas, people who want to join our team, partners who want to work with us. So the one thing I can say is people reach out to me or to us, they're going to hear back. They're going to hear back. So we love it.
Okay. I love it. Andy, thank you so much for being here. It's been a personal and professional pleasure, and I wish you and everybody on your team nothing but the best success.
Thanks, Anthony. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. Folks, my guest today is Andy Lansing, the CEO of Levy Restaurants. One of the things that I take away from today's conversation is you can always get better, and you can always just surround yourself with great people, great team, and having those ingredients for success just make a good dish. Pun intended. So folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I appreciate who you are, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving us a review. We appreciate you listening and following along, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And as Anthony says, until next time.